In the 18th century, a Najdi Islamic scholar named Muhammad Ibn Abdul Wahhab appeared and sought to purify Islam back to its original form and rid Islam of all innovations and practices he deemed as shirk. His movement became known as the Wahhabiyya, and they were known to make takfir on other Muslims. However, what is less known is that about a century before Abdul Wahhab, a nearly identical Muslim revivalist movement began in Ottoman Anatolia. In the late 16th century, Imam Muhammad Birgivi, a well-known Islamic scholar from Anatolia, authored the famous book At-Tariqa al-Muhammadiyya, where he was critical of certain Sufi groups, claiming their practices were innovations. He was especially critical of Ibn Arabi and the Bektashi Sufis, who were patronized by the Janissaries. Although Birgivi was a Hanafi scholar, he had many inclinations toward the views of Ibn Taymiyyah, particularly in his criticism of Sufism. Birgivi's works and ideas would begin to spread throughout the empire, and it would be future scholars who would teach his ideas publicly, one of them being Muhammad Qadizades, who was a mosque imam who began preaching the ideas of Birgivi to the public and obtained a mass following. Muhammad Qadizades was also a critic of Sufis and declared certain grave visits to be close to idolatry. These followers would be known as the Qadizades. Muhammad Qadizades would become politically active and was patronized by Sultan Murad IV. Murad IV went on to ban alcohol, tobacco, and coffee, and with the threat of execution anyone caught with these substances. This policy was most likely to target the Janissaries, as they were known to be heavy drinkers and smokers, and the 17th century sultans struggled to control them. After Muhammad Qadizades' death, the Qadizades would grow to their political might under the zealous Sultan Muhammad IV, who patronized the Qadizades. The scholars Muhammad ibn Ahmad al-Istiwani from Damascus and his successor Wani Muhammad would both become the Sultan's Sheikh, Padishah Sheikh. The Qadizades in this period, with their power and might, were able to influence policy, and they violently subdued their opponents, forcing them to accept their creed. During this period, many Sufi lodges and shrines were destroyed, and Sufi rituals, dances, and grave visits were banned. They even encouraged laymen to participate in endowing the right and forbidding the wrong. Al-Amr bil-Ma'ruf wa Nahi al-Munkar. They aimed to create a unity of believers without any differentiation of those closer to Allah, the Sufi saints, and those who were not. The Qadizades encouraged Muslims to strictly follow the Quran and Sunnah, aiming to purify Islam from innovations, magic, and superstitions and intermediaries. Qadizade preachers became the main voices in the imperial mosques. They were known for their readiness to declare takfir on other Muslims who participated in practices deemed innovative. They highly encouraged Muslims to live modestly and avoid pleasure and entertainment. However, with the fall of Sultan Mehmed IV in 1687 and the disaster of Vienna, the Qadizades became extremely unpopular and were immediately driven out of political power, and their scholars were exiled from Constantinople. Damascus would become their new base, where they continued their study circles. We know about this from the writings of the Naqshbandi Sufi scholar Abdul Ghani al-Nabulsi, an enemy of the Qadizades. He describes them as a people who made takfir on Sufis, condemned vocal dhikr, destroyed shrines of the Sayyids, opposed grave visits, and even declared that a smoker's prayer to be invalid. When we compare the Qadizades to the Wahhabi movement, we find very little difference between the two. When tracing Abdul Wahhab's scholarly lineage, his own fellow Najdi teacher Abdullah ibn Ibrahim's scholarly lineage traces back to Abu Muwahhib of the Damascus Hanbali Hadith circles, whose very own scholarly lineage ultimately leads back to the Ottoman Qadizades scholar Muhammad al-Ustawani of Damascus. Despite the scholarly connections to the Qadizades of the Ottomans, scholars conclude that the Qadizades were not predecessors to the Wahhabi movement, or any political connection between the two. A scholarly lineage might indicate a transfer of ideas, but does not prove that one movement led to another. The two movements had entirely different political goals and ambitions, as the Qadizades were under a vast imperial realm while the Wahhabis aimed to establish their own political state in the Najd outside Ottoman territory. What do you guys think? Are these two movements related, or are they different? Feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments below, and see you next time.